When you mention religion in pagan or pre-Christian Ireland, what comes to mind is Gaelic mythology, with all its fantastic heroes, beings and tales. However, given that Gaelic culture only emerged in Ireland around 600 BCE, other cultures with their own religious beliefs and practices existed for thousands of years before this in the island. In this video, we're going to examine some of these. In other words, we're going to try to go back to the dawn of history and talk about what these people believed. It's something difficult to do, but it is, I think, worth it, as it will help us gain some insights into the deep prehistory of Ireland. There's a particular problem here. In relation to Gaelic or Celtic or Iron Age Ireland, there is a considerable textual corpus, much material evidence, and a body of folk beliefs or traditions. Notably, we can put names and often voices on many of the supernatural beliefs of these people. Obviously, these voices and the textual corpus are filtered through a Christian lens. However, before the Iron Age, the situation changes dramatically. There is considerable material evidence, probably more than in the Iron Age, as can be seen in the passage graves, wedge tombs, stone rows, stone circles, etc. A vast number of sites exist, many of which can be related to rituals and probably to religion. On the other hand, there are no texts to help interpret the mass of material evidence, meaning that it is impossible to put names on these beliefs, to give voice to the people or names to their gods or spirits. We have considerable material remains, but can only guess what they were used for. The human history of pre-Iron Age Ireland covers a period of several thousand years, running from more or less 8000 BCE with the first settlers after the retreat of the ice to the end of the Bronze Age, around 600 BCE. This period consists of various different cultures, such as the hunter-gatherers, the first farmers, the Neolithic passage grave culture, the Beaker culture, and the Bronze Age culture. Undoubtedly, over such a long period, these people spoke different languages and had different beliefs and ritual practices. Different types of people were dominant in the various parts of Ireland during this period. Some of their forms of belief, especially in relation to death, can be seen in court cairns, passage tombs or stone circles. As well as constructing these monuments, many of these cultures also reused and reinterpreted older ones. For example, in Kerry was probably constructed in the Bronze Age, but it was used again in the Iron Age or even later. Like other royal sites, Tara was used, reused and reinterpreted over thousands of years. The first monument on the hill of Tara dates to around 3200 BCE. In the Neolithic period, it was used for around a century as a communal burial chamber, with around 300 burials being made there. In the Bronze Age, more burials were made around it, and further constructions were made. The Iron Age also saw new constructions, and it was woven into Gaelic mythology and stories. For Tara and other royal sites, the antiquity of the place seems to have been one of their attractions. Another vital question is interpretation. Sites and constructions need to be interpreted in the context in which they were built and used, not from present-day perspectives. In addition, not everything is a religious or ritualistic site, although this may seem to be the de facto view of many sites of many places. In addition, the use of sites changed over time. Both Tara and Uachtar are examples again. Both were given functions by the Gaelic people, which probably did not mean much to the original builders. Uachtar was said to mark the burial place of Skeina, wife of Emergan, leader of the Milesians, in other words the Gaelic people. Tara and other sites, such as Rathcrowan, were taken to be ancient sites tied into provincial kingships and were given a role in legitimating power in Gaelic Ireland. This also highlights the importance of what Ronald Hutton calls religious pluralism. We're talking about a long period covering several thousand years. was also a period when new people and new cultures came into Ireland. These brought new ways of thinking, of building, and indeed of living. Farming arrived during this period, as did many animals such as cows. New beliefs would have also come into Ireland, while others would have changed organically. It's likely that different religious beliefs, or at least beliefs in the supernatural, existed at the same time. In this long period, there would have been some times when there would have been a plurality of religious ideas, meaning that different forms of belief coexisted. In understanding this movement of ideas, people, and things, the sea should not be seen as a boundary, but rather as a means of circulation. Ireland was neither cut off or hidden behind the larger island of Britain. For example, court cairns are rarely found in Britain, and where they are found, in Scotland and the Isle of Man, they seem to have been influenced by Ireland. They seem to have come directly into Ireland from what is now France. Another example is the copper that was mined in Kerry, especially around Ross Island, and then exported, if we can use that word, to England and elsewhere. At certain periods in pre-Iron Age Ireland, there was considerable mobility of ideas, beliefs, and people. When talking about this period, it is important to think beyond national boundaries. Ireland and Britain existed as islands. They were not political categories. There were no nations in northwestern Europe at that time. France, England, or any other country at this stage are simply useful geographic categories to note the location of sites. In addition, many of the megalithic constructions seem to have originated outside Ireland. Versions of them were built elsewhere first. Then they were copied and often modified in Ireland. In the case of Newgrange and the large passage graves, it can be argued that they reached their peak in Ireland. On the other hand, some types of construction seem to have been very localized. For example, there are very different types of stone circles in Cork and Kerry on the one hand and in Ulster on the other. Does this mean that a particular culture and its religious beliefs were restricted solely to these geographic areas? It's hard to say, as the evidence is often fragmentary. While the Beaker culture seems to have replaced the Neolithic culture that built the passage graves, and to have covered most of Ireland, some of the cultures which followed them may have been restricted. This is particularly likely of those who built the stone circles in Cork and Kerry. Moreover, in relation to the Munster stone circles, due to the copper trade, this would have been a wealthy area at the time, possibly the wealthiest in Ireland, which may have something to do with the predominance of stone circles there. When talking about this period, it is important to think beyond national boundaries. Ireland and Britain existed as islands. They were not political categories. There were no nations in northwestern Europe at that time. France, England, or any other country at this stage are simply useful geographic categories to note the location of sites and/or peoples. In addition, many of the megalithic constructions seems to have originated outside Ireland. Versions of them were built elsewhere first. They were then copied and often modified in Ireland. In the cases of Newgrange and the large passage graves, it can be argued that they reached their peak in Ireland. On the other hand, some types of construction were localized. For example, there are very different types of stone circles in Cork and Kerry on the one hand and in Ulster on the other. Does this mean that a particular culture and its religious beliefs were restricted solely to these geographic areas? It's hard to say, as the evidence is often fragmentary. While the Beaker culture seems to have replaced the Neolithic culture that built the passage graves and to have covered most of Ireland, some of the cultures which followed them may have been restricted. This is particularly likely of those who built the stone circles in Cork and Kerry. Moreover, in relation to these stone circles, due to the copper trade, this was a wealthy area, possibly the wealthiest in Ireland at that time, and this may have had something to do with the predominance of stone circles. The construction of the large passage tombs, stone rows, stone circles, etc., points to the existence of a high level of sophistication in social organization. The alignment of these constructions with solar, lunar, or astronomical phenomena, their locations, and the decoration on some also show that belief systems must have been equally sophisticated. However, it is important to point out that there is no evidence of a single belief dominating the country. Indeed, there is no evidence of a single organized religion. Undoubtedly, there were people who performed religious or supernatural or magical functions who can be called priests. Large parts of the country probably shared similar beliefs and had the same gods or supernatural figures. However, before Christianity, no church dominated the entire island, especially in the Neolithic and Bronze Age periods. Rather, most likely, a fragmented religious system existed, or indeed systems. These were dynamic and would have changed considerably. It's also worth noting the communal aspects of belief and social action. The megalithic sites appear to have been communal, used both as communal burial places, but also built communally. Likewise, the ritual or use of these structures was communal. People came together to live, to participate in social acts, ranging from farming to ritualistic behavior, and it seems to bury the dead. Interacting with the supernatural, even with what we can call worship, likewise involved communal actions. It is time now to turn to the question of what were the religious beliefs of pre-Iron Age Ireland. This is a vast question, one that is extremely hard to answer. For example, there is no way of knowing the names the bell beakers, the builders of the passage graves, or the hunter-gatherers gave to their gods, local spirits, or supernatural beings. Nonetheless, we can attempt to point to some aspects of what some of these people believed in. Dáithí hÓgáin attempted to do this in his book, The Sacred Isle, Belief and Religion in Pre-Christian Ireland. It is interesting to note that hÓgáin is a professor of folklore. This may have given him more freedom to speculate about beliefs. Nonetheless, most of his book is actually related to the Iron Age, with only one chapter devoted to the previous periods. I'll return to hÓgáin in a bit, but first, let us just think of the many sites in Ireland, whether Neolithic or Bronze Age, which may have had a religious function. Due to the alignment and location of many of these sites, it seems clear that their builders were strongly interested in the skies, in the sun, the moon, and astronomy. Numerous sites were aligned to solstices or lunar events. However, especially with stone rows, something else is noticeable. As the archaeologist Clive Ruggles pointed out quite a while ago, while they may be aligned with solar or lunar events, this alignment is often adapted to local landscapes. In other words, the alignment may be slightly off, so an alignment could also be made with something on the horizon, most often a mountain. This allows us tentatively identify some of the central elements in the beliefs of some pre-Iron Age peoples in Ireland. As might be expected, these include the sun, the moon, and related astronomical events. These would have been central in an agricultural society where knowledge of the seasons and time to sow or reap was central to life. However, the location of megalithic structures and the alignment of some with mountains often points to the importance of mountains and other parts of the landscape. This may raise more questions than provide answers. The importance of mountains might appear to some to be surprising, yet at another level, sacred mountains make sense. As mountain tops are a sort of liminal area, far above land usable for tillage or even for pasture, they're also often hard to get to, and also powerful places. Cairns can be found on many mountain tops. Some of these, notably in the Dublin Mountains, have been excavated and found to be tombs. Others are piles of stone whose date is hard to identify. Indeed, sacred mountains seem to be common to many forms of religion in Ireland, whether in the Neolithic or Bronze Age, or indeed in the modern Christian period. Croagh Patrick stands out here. There could also have been some sort of symbolic connection between the stone of a sacred mountain and the stone used in constructions, whether the large passage graves or a smaller wedge tomb. Stone in a way is eternal, as are stone constructions. hÓgáin also refers to the importance of stone and to what he calls socializing the environment. Standing stones in particular had this function. He believed that they would mark somewhere as spiritually or religiously important. Stone was also seen as possessing a supernatural power, hence their use to cure people, or for cursing, or for making promises. Stone could also mark a barrier between the dead and the living. hÓgáin believes that the traces of the beliefs of these people can still be found in Irish folklore. I'm not sure though how much I agree with him. While some of his arguments are persuasive, I'm hesitant to accept a clear trail between beliefs of before 1000 BCE and the 19th and 20th centuries. While the different megalithic constructions were built by different cultures over a period of a few thousand years, they highlight some important points about the religious systems of these different cultures. As hÓgáin also points out, they mark the emergence of a difference between the sacred and the profane. Some places were given a particular sacred or holy significance, whether Newgrange or Itakua or Tara. I would also add here that the different cultures in Irish history recognised many of the sacred sites of previous cultures and reused them. Itakua, Newgrange and Tara were all occupied and used or reused over a wide period of time. Indeed, all of the so-called kingship sites of Iron Age Ireland, Tara, Awanmaka, Rockrowan, etc., were also much older sites given a new significance in Gaelic Ireland. Their antiquity and their ancient sacredness gave them legitimacy in the political and religious beliefs of the Gaelic people, both before and after Christianization. Indeed, one of these kingship sites, Cashel, became a new type of sacred site after it was given to the church. The fact that so many of the megalithic constructions are used for burials points to the importance of ideas about death and life, and indeed communal welfare. The latter is easiest to think about. Sites that are aligned to solar or lunar events could function as a type of calendar, helping to decide on the vital question of when to plant and reap crops. However, more abstract questions are involved. hÓgáin actually mentions the circle of life here and what he calls the problem of death. He seems to believe that there was a belief in some sort of cycle of death and rebirth linked to worship of the sun, symbolizing rebirth or rejuvenation. Indeed, he says, quote, "The symbolism of the primeval couple, the male sun and the female earth, formed the common basis of belief among ancient peoples," end quote. While this may be so, it is somewhat of a jump to apply this to Ireland, especially in the absence of evidence. Though it is very possible that solar worship was particularly advanced in Ireland when the passage graves were developed. Religion was undoubtedly used to interpret the environment, providing help with crops as mentioned before. It would also have had a social aspect, helping with social cohesion and perhaps even social identity through rituals. In turn, this leads to another unanswerable but important question. Who was buried in the passage graves and other burial sites? Why these people and not others? Some people, or most people? The answer to this question would have changed over time, as would the rituals used, and indeed the belief of the purpose of the monuments that held the bones or ashes of the dead. It is also linked to the changing functions of the dead and the place they were buried. Was it believed the dead would be reborn, or did their spirits have to be sent on somewhere else? Court cairns were generally built with their entrances facing the east and the burial chamber to the west. This differs from the much later wedge tombs and stone circles of Munster. In wedge tombs, the entrances tend to be on the west or southwest, while stone circles often have openings facing east or west. However, this could be disrupted by local geographic factors. It is possible that the location of these entrances was connected in some way to beliefs about death and about the sun. The fascinating Beaker or Belt Beaker people need to be mentioned here. In addition to the pottery for which they are famous, their culture seems to have brought the stone circle to Ireland. Indeed, they seem to have had a fascination with circle, building the magnificent Grange stone circle near Loch Gur, but they also built other circles of stone or circular ditches around existing sites, such as Newgrange. This seems to mark a new type of belief, one different from the large communal passage graves. While some passage graves seem to have been used by them, could we say venerated here, newer small wedge tombs appear. Perhaps the population was larger and more dispersed, it's hard to say. In addition, the Beakers tend to be associated with copper and copper mining in Ireland. In an interesting discussion about them on the Amplify Ireland podcast, the magical nature of copper is stressed, turning a stone into metal. Did the Beaker people have stories and legends about this skill? Was it explained as a gift of the gods or some other supernatural figures? We cannot say, but it is a distinct possibility. I've sketched out here some themes related to religion and religious practices in the pre-Iron Age period in Ireland. From the material evidence from Newgrange, Nowt, Doubt, to Ictacua, Loch Gur Stone Circle or Ura Circle, it seems abundantly clear that religion was important throughout this period. It changed as cultures appeared, transformed or disappeared. Nonetheless, religious beliefs and practices are one commonality in a long period that was comprised by many changes. While none of these peoples of the dawn had voices, we do have evidence of how they looked at the supernatural world. This was communal and seems to be deeply entangled with astronomical bodies, with the sun, the moon, and other events. It also seems to be involved with interpreting and dealing with death, and obviously with interpreting reality. It's hard to say more than that. We have to be content with this answer, no matter how fragmentary it is. History is a jigsaw with many missing pieces, and often no picture to help joining these pieces. We thus have to accept our ignorance and limit ourselves to educated guesses and hope that we can shed some light on the past in this way. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video and leave a comment. Finally, if you can support the channel, the link to my Buy Me a Coffee account is below. If you could make a donation, it would be wonderful. Go raibh maith agaibh.